Lugere Yetiga Diashumate Yogi Savai Shumakumuli Soyuzaga to Kutsivara Kaindi Soyuzaga Pikai Shuma the Bawa Musha Dimi Gulu Vatana Tribra Vatana Diari Atude Sura Kure Mashi Joju Yuna Diari the Bawa take Guredi Tibu Shuyada Lila Galili Tia the Suyaga Pikai Shuma the Bawa Mindida. The game in our Pikai Suda Zagazuma Pisu the Zagara and Yacheva Sagali, the lonely Chinalo did the low chay do ya Kaisu the Zagaro Bisupa Chajabon Lola Zepu Pinida Shinido Pika Piliama Mideluchi Minedo Jadaluchi Jaga Janido Nakaluchi Nanido Yadari Sadi de Kamala Sanido Goa Titu de Kamala Tinido to a rotary Yacheva Tile Gala Tile Chansile Gala Chansido Lechi Jamshi Kuireka Saneka Sauneka Mereka Tileka Sadi Bolita Yudi Yetom Kata Melupita Punavasa Koluma Lima Pawani Tishaya Pikaima Shuya Shusura and Nachimana Tabletama Ari Chevi Shura Atavalunga put it in Asaka Chida Kaipira Talagua Yiji Maradura Ela Shu Kora Manimana Shura that they Yiji Varadura Dido I would look at together, see Pisaka Parmata Tiari Niang Shura Shuro Edadi Quapido Shua Mesa a Puri Pani Vala Belodons Raboli Mesiadi Meguni Pola Vala Adusa Yogi Ma Below Pia Ship the Wawatiari will Quapido Chido Miawa. A shooter to Karakama Kurega Marali, Pura Lady, Jana Nuda Lady Pura Nuda Ada, Yipura, you see the town Atena. The lady had no pension or toilet apart to do. Adaria Emna Tisha Shukwe, are you super iron? But Tisha Haria Malaysia Ayari Sura Loga O'Hara Neve Loga Maku Susaneve Eda Sure about it. Pony, Pay, Tiny, Tea, Joy, the Lion, Man, and Giant Sada. Yet, those Gane Kalua. Yet, those Gama Pavelo. The Wawa, you take the Quapido. When you name Mamu, it had a Nale Tawa.
In the previous days, Sayadawgyi spoke about how yogis observe at the beginning of the practice, and he mentioned a fixed principle for observation or meditation, which is only when one observes at the moment of arising will one see true nature. So in this practice of vipassana meditation is to observe the true nature of the mind and matter that exists, that arises in our being. We observe it in order to know it. And through observing, one really comes to see it. So in this saying, only when one observes at the moment of arising, there's the word arising and a moment of arising. So this term arising can be used to mean anything that arises in us. It's it's just one word, but it encompasses a very, very broad category of things. And when we say the moment of arising, that means the present moment, at the very moment, right when it's happening. So in the moment of seeing, to observe at the moment of seeing means while seeing is happening. To observe at the moment of hearing means when hearing happens, right then. At the moment of smelling, right when smelling happens. At the moment of tasting, right when tasting happens. At the moment of touching, when touching happens. The category of touch is very, very broad. Many things can be included in that category. At the moment of knowing, that means when knowing is happening. At the moment of imagining, when imagining is happening. When there's a cause to do so, then there's also bending, stretching, leaning. At the moment these happen, we observe. There's blinking, opening and closing the eyes. All these things are included when we use the word arising, at the moment of arising. And then this rule also says that only when one observes at the moment of arising. So what is it to observe? We have to add powers in order to be able to see. And one of these is ardent effort to observe the object, and the other is accurate aim. These two are the most important, and that's what it means to observe, to apply ardent effort and accurate aim in order to see the object. And one needs to observe without rest, without taking breaks. This is very important. So the work to do is that we need to observe in order to see true nature, the true nature of mind and matter. So the question arises, well, how is it that we can just select out the true nature? How can we just focus on true nature, or sabhava in Pali? Starting yogis, no matter how wise they are, no matter how much they've learned, they can't just pick out sabhava and observe it. Sabhava are things like hardness, softness, heat, coolness, warmth, flowing, solidity, stickiness, stiffness, tension, moving. And when one observes, later one comes to see these qualities. These are very obvious objects to be observed. But when we observe, we have to use conventional terms to help us see the objects. Like we observe lifting as lifting, moving as moving, placing. We use conventional terms to label what it is we're observing. And without using these conventional terms, it's not possible just to focus on the true nature without the use of these conventional terms or labels. So the yogis need to understand this.
နေ့စဉ်စားရဆောက်ရတဲ့စားဝယ်တောက်ဝယ်တွေထဲမှာကိုယ်စီပေါ့လေအဒီချူချီစပ်ဖာအငံခါရတာ6ပါးဆိုတာ6ပါးရဲ့တစ်ခုခုတော့ရှိပါတယ်အဲဒီရတာရဲ့တရားအတုံးလေးတွေအဖက်ကလေးတွေအရည်တွေပေါ့လေအတုံးလေးတွေအဖက်ကလေးတွေအရည်တွေတတ်တတ်အရသာတတ်တတ်ပါတခြားစီပါအတုံးအဖက်အရည်တွေကတတ်တတ်နေနိုင်ပြီမယ်လို့အရသာကတော့သိကြည်တတ်တတ်ခွဲနေလို့မရပါဘူးအဲဒီအတုံးဖက်အရည်ထဲမှာရှိနေပါလေစားတဲ့တောက်တဲ့အခါမှာအရသာအရေးကြီးဆုံးပါပဲအရသာတွေမှာပါတဲ့ဩဇာဘောဒီဗီတာမင်အဲ့ဒါအရေးကြီးပါလေဗီတာမင်တွေဒီလိုပြန့်နှံ့သွားဖို့အဲ့ဒါကချွချင်းစပ်အငံခါအရသာ6တဲမှာပါပါတယ်ဒီတော့ဗီတာမင်ဩဇာဓာတ်ဆိုတာလည်းပဲရသာတွေမှာပါတယ်ဒီရသာကလည်းပဲနေ့စဉ်စားရတဲ့အတုံးအဖအရည်ထဲမှာအဲ့ဒီရသာတွေရှိတယ်ဒီလိုခန္ဓာကိုယ်မှာဩဇာဓာတ်တွေလိုလို့ရှိရင်အရသာရှိတဲ့အတုံးဖက်ကလေးကိုပဲအရည်ကိုပဲဟိုမှာရတယ်အရည်တောက်ရတယ်တောက်လို့ရှိရင်ဩဇာဓာတ်တွေပါတော့ခါလဲပါလာတာပဲဒီမှာဩဇာဓာတ်ရွေးစားလို့မရအထူးအားဖြင့်ခုနအရသာရွေးစားလို့မရအထူးအားဖြင့်ဩဇာဓာတ်ကိုယူပြီးတော့စားလို့မရသူရဲ့တရားအတုံးဖက်ကလေးရောအရည်တွေပေါ့ဒီအဲ့ဒါတွေကိုကြည့်ရဝါရတော့ရပါလေဒီမှာတရားထုတ်တဲ့ယောဂီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လည်းဒီတိုင်းပဲရုပ်တဘာဝတက်တဲ့ဉာဏ်တဘာဝတက်တဲ့ဒါလေးတွေအမှန်သိဝိတာဖြစ်တော့သူတို့ရဲ့တရားဌာနရှိတယ်အဲဒီတရားဌာနအဓိကထားပြီးတော့မှရတာပဲမြင်တဲ့အခါမျက်စိကြည့်တာမြင်တော့ကြည်တတ်ရှိတယ်အတိုက်တအရှင်းရောင်ရှိတယ်အပွင့်တမြည်တည်တာမြင်ခါတာရှိတယ်အဲ့ဒါတွေအကုန်လုံးဒီမျက်စိမှာသွားပြီးတော့စုတာပဲအဲ့ဒါတွေကြည့်ကြလို့ရှိပေါင်းပြီးတော့မြင်တယ်လို့ဒီလိုမှတ်ရပါတယ်မျက်စိအကြည်ဓာတ်ကိုရွေးပြီးတော့ကြည့်လို့မရအဲ့ဒါမှတိုက်ခိုက်ပေါ်တဲ့အတိုက်တအစီအရောင်ကိုလည်းရွေးပြီးတော့ကြည့်လို့မရမြည်တည်တာမြင်တွေ့တာမြင်ခံစားတာအပွင့်လက်ကိုလည်းရွေးကြည့်လို့မရပါဘူးပေါင်းလိုက်ပဲအတုံးလိုက်ခဲလိုက်ကိုပဲမြင်တယ်လို့ဒီလိုမှတ်ရတာပါပဲဒီမှာထို့တူတဲ့ကြားတဲ့ကြမှာလည်းကြားတယ်နားတယ်စားတယ်ထိတယ်ဆိုတော့ဒီလိုအတုံးလိုက်ဒီလိုလို့ပါပဲဒီမှာအဲ့ဒါတွေကဟိုတို့ကပြောမှုများနေပါပြီဒါပဲလေအခုထပ်ပြီးတော့ပြောရပါတယ်
In the food and the drink that we have every day, there are unique flavors. There's sweetness, sourness, spicy, astringent, and sour and bitter. And there's some flavor or other in the food that we eat. And this This flavor is located in the food or in the drink that we eat or drink. The food, the solid food and the flavor of it are two different things. But one can't separate the flavor from the food. It's in the food. And when we eat or drink, this flavor is the most important thing in the food, because the flavor also contains the nutritive part of the food called oja. So this nutritive element is in the physical part called the flavor, and the flavor is in the food. The thing that we can taste is in the food. So if we need to have nutrition, then we have to take a morsel of food or a drink in order to get it. We can't just take the nutritious part. And we also can't just take the flavor. We have to take the lump of food or the drink that contains the nutritive essence and the flavor. And it's just like this when the yogis try to observe true nature. The true nature or sabhava of mind and matter are very, very subtle. And they have a place where they occur. And that place, for example, in the moment of seeing, where seeing happens is the eye. On the eye, there's the receptor for the visible object. And in seeing, there's also a visible object. And there's the seeing consciousness, which is knowing the sight, contact and feeling. And all these are gathered together on the eye base. So when we want to observe these, we can't just pick one out and observe it. We have to observe the thing as a whole. We label it as seeing, and it happens on the eye. So we can't just select out the eye base or the object, the visible object, and observe just that, or the seeing consciousness, contact, or feeling. The way we have to observe it is just as a lump, just as a group of things, and this whole thing is called seeing. And it's the same way with hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing. As Sayadawgyi said before, he talked about how these experiences happen, but today he is speaking about it again.
Yoga Tishi Tattwari Manamya Tebe Yauri Manamya Turu Matali is the Shiva Balilu Lekana Lukova the Kuleku Turichaja Kweja Tibuya Dre Badarai Maboli, Eddie of Matali Taja Vale. Eddie Matali Mabio Daba, where to our tea about Eddie Matali ha the Gracie of she did the Bawari Tibuya Matali Babe. It a Palido Lekana look over.
In the world, everything, whether it's living or not, has a characteristic. The word for characteristic in Pali is lakkhana, distinguishing characteristic. It's what distinguishes one. It's the characteristic that distinguishes one thing from another, one being from another. And every language has words for these characteristics. And these are how we know true nature. We know true nature by its characteristics.
Eri Lekanaga, the Guru Tia Atu Yogi Poku Yaya, a Niboma TV, a Niboma T Yeti Vido, 3 မျိုးခွဲထားပါတယ်အဲဒီ 3 မျိုးက 1 သဘာဝလက္ခဏာ 2 စံကတလက္ခဏာ 3 သမညာလက္ခဏာ သဘာဝစံကတသမညာ 3 ဝလက္ခဏာရှိတယ်လို့ယောဂီများအထောက်ဖို့အတွေ့နဲ့ဆက်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ဩဟာရတွေလက်တွေ့တရားထုတ်တဲ့နေရာမှာ 3 မျိုးကွဲပြားနေပါတယ်ဒီနေ့အဲဒီ 3 မျိုးတစ်ခုချင်းတစ်ခုချင်းရှင်းပြပါမယ်
In terms of the yogi's vision, what the yogis see or experience, there are 3 kinds of characteristics or lakkhana. The first is called sabhava lakkhana. The second is called sankata lakkhana. And the third is called samanya lakkhana. So sabhava, sankata, samanya. There are these 3 types of characteristics. And these 3 characteristics are found in the realm of Dhamma practice. They're part of the vocabulary. And today Sayadawgyi will explain them one by one.
အဲဒီ 3 မျိုးတွေက သဘာဝလက္ခဏာတော့ထားလိုက်ပါလိမ့်သဘာဝကြည့်ကြစို့ သဘာဝမှာစကတစ်ခုဘာဝတစ်ခုဘာဝဆိုတာကဖြစ်နေတာရှိနေတာကိုပါဠိလိုဘာဝလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ဆိုကြပါစို့အခုကိုယ်ထဲမှာအပူပေါ်လာတယ်ဒါစိုက်ပြီးတော့ကြည့်လို့ရှိရင်အပူမှန်းသိနေတာပဲဒါရှိလို့သိရတာပေါ့ဒီအပူမှန်းဒါကိုယ်ထဲမှာဖြစ်နေတာပဲကိုယ်ထဲမှာဖြစ်နေရှိတာပဲဒီကတော့အဲ့ဒါပါဠိလိုဘာဝခေါ်တယ်အဲ့ဒီပူတဲ့သဘာဝဟာတေဇောခေါ်တဲ့အပူဓာတ်မိဓာတ်မှသာရှိတယ်အခိုးဓာတ်မှသာရှိတယ်တခြားသဘာဝတွေမှမရှိဘူးသူကတတိတိချပဲကိုယ်ပိုင်နဲ့ဒါမလို့သကိုစီတတိတိချသူနဲ့ကဒီတေဇောနဲ့ကသစ္ဆိုင်နေဟာစကောဘာဝစဘာဝစကောကိုစီဖြစ်တော့ဘာဝဖြစ်နေတာရှိနေတာတဲ့ဒါသဘာဝခေါ်တယ်ကိုယ်ထဲမှာမာကြောတဲ့ကျိုးဤနည်းနေရာတွေရှိတယ်ဒါပထဝီနဲ့သာဆိုင်လာပဲတခြားတတ်တည်နဲ့မဆိုင်ဘူးတွဲတာခဲတာအရေးပြောတာယူစီတာဒါအဘောဓနဲ့သာဆိုင်လာပဲတခြားတတ်တည်နဲ့မဆိုင်ဘူးအဲ့ဒါသဘာဝတွေပဲဒီစုံမှလည်းပူတာနှွေးတာအေးတာပေါ့တာဒါဒီစုံတဲ့နဲ့သာဆိုင်လာပဲတခြားတတ်တည်နဲ့မဆိုင်ဘူးနတ်တရားတွေမှာလည်းပဲစိတ်တည်တာနတ်တရားနဲ့သာဆိုင်တယ်အဲ့ဒီနတ်တရားတွေထဲမှာလည်းပဲထိတွေ့တာဖတ်တဲ့နဲ့သာဆိုင်တယ်တရားနတ်တရားတွေနဲ့မဆိုင်ဘူးခံစားတာဝေဒနာနဲ့သာဆိုင်တယ်ရှားတယ်နဲ့မဆိုင်ဘူးအဲ့ဒီရုပ်တရားနဲ့တရားတွေမှာကိုယ်စီတဲ့ပစ္စတ္တဘာဝလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ကိုယ်စီကိုယ်တည်းလေးတွေပေါ့လေအတိအကျကိုယ်တည်းလေးတွေအဲ့ဒါကိုသဘာဝလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ပမာလို့တော့ကိုယ်စီသဘာဝကိုယ်ပိန်သဘာဝပေါ့လေတိကျသဘာဝဒီလိုလဲဆိုနေပါတယ်
Among these 3, sabhava, the word sabhava, which is translated as natural characteristic or individual characteristic. Sabhava is made up of 2 words in Pali, sa and bhava. And bhava Bhava means something which occurs, which happens, which exists. And an example of this is in the body, heat arises. And if one observes with focus, one will know the heat. The heat is really there. It is happening in one's body. It exists in the body. And because of that, it's called bhava. And heat is a characteristic of the element of temperature. It doesn't occur in any other type of matter. It only occurs in what is the physical thing called the element of temperature. So it's distinct. It's unique to this element called tejo dhatu. So the first part of the word sabhava means individual or unique. It is this is the characteristic that only is found in the element of temperature or tejo dhatu. So it is said sakko bhavo sabhavo, that it is its own unique characteristic which is really there. So other elements, for example, there's hardness, softness, coarseness. These qualities are only found in the earth element, Patavi Dhatu. There's the qualities of flowing or solidity. These things are only found in the element of water or Apo Dhatu. There's heat, warmth, coolness, lightness. These are only found in the element of temperature. And so also knowing, the mind has the characteristic to know. Other things don't. It's the mind that knows. So the mind knowing is the sabhava of the mind. And then there's contact, the experience of coming into contact. That's the characteristic of the mind state called phassa. It has the characteristic to contact. And Vedana, feeling. It has the characteristic of feeling. So each of these mental and physical things has their own characteristic. And these characteristics are called sabhava, which can be called individual characteristic or unique characteristic.
Kata Cubian Hara, Cubian Cantiari or Cubian of Killer, the Rakilla of Saya Jonga Pandipilalu Popola, the Yuna Diari Ha, Ucha Pola, Technology, Jokoravel, Shane Bailey Boli, Technology. Upara Kimu Gore Chain Bailey Titi down of the Chain Bailey Benga Pesido Chain Bailey Tomashi Baledama Eraga Kana look over the Kana Chain Bailey Yunan Dearifa Pifu Timu Yin and Lesson Mother Tidao Pimu, Yimu, Yimu, the Columba Vedama, Eddie Chain Bailey, who Palido Segata Kana look over the Dama, Segata Kana, Segata Diaru Kana, Lekana look over the Segata Lekana.
In the stream of one's existence, the mind and matter, the true nature of mind and matter, which occurs within us, they don't occur without a cause. They have a cause. They're not created by a supreme being. There's a reasonable cause, a suitable cause for them to occur. And the example that Sayadawgyi gave is that when the speaker is speaking, they're making sounds. And it's because two hard elements are coming into contact within the body. Without any hardness in the body, it won't be possible for sounds to be created. And when two hard things touch, then sound is created. And the reason for the sound to come to be when a person speaks is that the mind is causing the sound to be made. So, in this same way, mind and matter, they all have their own causes. They come into being due to causes, due to relevant causes, and because of that they are called sankata. They are compounded. Sankata means compound in English, but the two parts of it, one is san and kata. So it means, kata means that it is put together, and san means due to its relevant causes. But to use one word, you would say compounded. So things that are compounded, they arise one moment, they're there briefly, and then they pass away. They're marked by these three stages in their existence of the arising, the brief duration, and then the falling apart. And in Pali these are called upada, or arising, titi, which is the momentary existence, and bhanga, which is the dissolution. So all mind and matter are characterized by these three moments in their existence. They arise, exist a brief moment, and then pass away. And the way they are characterized by these three moments is called sankata lakkhana. That is called, in English you would say, compound characteristic. All mind and matter has the characteristic of having a beginning, middle, and an end.
Umayo, one by seven shooting. Do near my yola, Lucia. Ponali Salada. Salad, chili. Ponala the Babalakana, Dona. Edema Salada, chain. Down of Pounded, down of Yanni. Pounded. Oh no, Ponali joke with order. Kimu, Yimu, Yamu, Kimu, Yamu, Yamu. Pinamala to Nido, Pinali Salad, down of Tini, Pinali joke. Kuriga Purali South Polare, down on Nida joke. Jola lady polare, down on the joke. Popo la video, holy, technology video. Joke with or chili. There I will. Tikata Lekana, look over it. Two good at the Mishubo Maluva. The Bawari Kitai Madua Bani. The Bawa Selim Ho to her. Tanya Lekana Suragaro. Ericona Marari Manamia, Purari Manamia, Jana Lurari Manamia, Town Bona Kerari, the Purari, you see Dari, Puranuya Erari, Tona Dinari, Nina Jara, Nanasara Sadi Body, Taria. A column she would have kid that time at you. The column get as you were. Too easy at the door. That is too easy. Amadago. Tamia look over them. Pobilo Piago resolution. People get or resolution. We will take or as a day of it. Canavana, Jondas and Luna, dear, boiler, Chichinti, boiler, Chichinti, boiler, Chichinti. Theatre will come have it. There are Doka Korabe. Pobilo took without a chia divally to a chia Magona, father, Magona looking at it. Conari, Yuki, or Leve, Colum Dunham, Jonda say, Pimava. Magona, Lavazina, Jalum Yahoo. The Jonda say, Magona, Pimava. Go look at Bam, she could have. Two look at the Pinny. Go look at Pinny. Hey, you were a task of she do. Go look at that. Good for the Yunan Diari. Good Tandama 50 through Tanama 50. The Piloga have 50 body. Daria Kono can't do Yimia Pidi, Chia Agara cover it. Here I go. Samia Lekanalu cover it. Do you Lekanabo? Do you Lekanare?
Mind and matter, which are sankata, compound, coming together due to causes, they arise, they age a moment, and then they pass away. And an example of how this happens is that when we put our attention on the abdomen begins to rise. And the rising of the abdomen has the true nature or the quality of stiffness. And the fact that it begins, that's one moment in time in the existence of the rising or in the existence of the stiffness. It arises, it's there, and it goes away. It arises, is there, and goes away. And the falling is the same, that it has a beginning, it comes into being, then it's there a moment, and then it passes away. Same with heat. It arises, it's there a moment, it passes away. Or the lifting, it arises, it's there a moment, and then it passes away. So this characteristic of arising, having a brief duration and then passing away, is called sankata lakkhana, or compound characteristic. And there is no need to observe it, because it is just an aspect of true nature. It's an aspect that can be found in any type of true nature whatsoever. But it is not true nature. The characteristic of being compound is not true nature itself. So all mind and matter, for example, all hardness, all softness, all coarseness, arises and then passes away. All solidity, all flowing things, all sticky things, they arise and pass away. All seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, they come into being and then they don't stay that way. They pass away. So they are all the same in having this, in behaving like this. They arise and then they don't stay that way, they pass away. And because they all have this characteristic is called samanya lakkhana. Something that arises and then passes away, it's as though it is born and then dies immediately. So how can it be called good? Nothing that is born and then dies immediately can be called good. So it is called dukkha. It is not satisfactory. And this aspect of mind and matter which arises, that it arises and then passes away, it is not good because of this. It also cannot be prevented. One can't prevent mind and matter once it's arisen from falling apart. One can't prevent it from arising. If the causes are there for it to arise, it will arise. When the causes are no longer there, it will fall apart. So it's simply an empty process that has no self. There's no self to be found in it. And therefore it is called anatta, without an inherent self. So all mind and matter, both within us, in other people, in the world around us, all mind and matter which arise is the same in having these characteristics of being impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a self. And therefore these are called common characteristics, or samanya lakkhana.
This koji the bhava lakkhana ni kichi Kurega Kitu she said you go to Tripsan in Lapito Shumaya Kika Shuma the Bawa Mucha Dinali, Loma Dinali Kika when I saw the wing of yoga at the Gaipo Jagat Sati body. But Kanda data Pundati. The chain never bumps up with each other. She would do my yellow meow. Now, a good Nareva than a young yogi Nareva. Nashi Lucia, a tan lalo, a tan Lucia. You go Ponda Luci, Jara Pilla. Tapilla. Sayadawgyi Panditabhivamsa Sayadawgyi Panditabhivamsa Shi Pandita Punati Journey to my life with the sure. Dhamma Tina. Shushu Madina, they will go. Dhamma to Sayadaw Savior, your daughter. So, Minajarani, Daria, like to Mara, to Jero, a Luezum, Masabi, good time of Matega. Pemu, Pemu. Now, Pony, to name in a lobby to fire. The Caravalecci, Jonsi, Quizia, Chiluchi, Quira, less social Chilu Sota, Daria body. Sujabazo, less social Sujabazo. The Minya Madamana Solaruchi, Bawam Divo, Le Manam Divo, so Manam Divo, and he sold a Kaitama. She needed the Bawalam Dinam. The Matame, where they were Bawam Divo. The Raja Susavido, Sayadawgyi Solution. The great Bawa Mati Tiawanoma. Lepo Masika Kanila. The Charabam Tuam. The Pakomale. Let down dinner, let down. Lepo Yibo Malay Yonane, let down in a Yonane. Now, Tomo to Karaga, so therefore, so little down, so don't down now, so down. Let's over Malay Yonane, Tomo down on a 12 video, so down. Now, the Bawa Sisi, Matweti Noma, Lepoma, Sote Muyavoma, Puntantane, Agara for the Sota Poma, Sigliti Boma, Yoni de Soyeme, the Charabam Doro. And he said, Tachina Sigli Pony, to the Dinia no Pau. Now, we are the Didi. The Madidi Agona Lekama, so like saying, Sota Madekama, or Tona, Dina, Chata, that it will have. Better the Wawa will be of it. You know, Pongham Muya, the Wawa, don't be an analysis. Tishapoya Shumaga, Ida Piona says Raboli. Sota Kama, Sota Boro Matala, so Mapare, Batuitale. Who do it, Joleko? Let me report our Sota Muya, Sota Muyavo. Dhamma don't know the 10th or ever could do it at your body. Eddie Ponhamuya, the Wawa, don't Jadia Solution. She went Napang out of the Bawa, Sim Hobu. Down at it, 10 at each other, Edama, the Bawa, You dare to this already, the Bawa Siku, Miyauchi, whatever. So the Lumana.
If we want to know these sabhava, or the true nature, then one has to observe them in the body when they happen with the method of satipatthana. As was initially said, only if one observes at the moment of arising will one see true nature. So one has to observe at the moment of seeing, observe at the moment of hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. If one observes, at that time, the base element, the striker element, and the spark element are occurring together. For example, when I'm speaking, in the yogi's ear, there's sound that is reaching the ear. And because there is an ear, hearing arises. Also, because the sound wave comes and strikes the ear, hearing arises. These two come together. They come together and hearing occurs. So to know these elements that are involved in the moment of hearing, the base element or the sense base, the striker that is the sound, or the spark, the consciousness, then one needs to observe at the moment of hearing. But one can't know it. One can't know these elements right away. But when one observes, the mind doesn't go anywhere else. Even though one doesn't know yet the elements, the mind is staying right there. The category of touch is very broad. For example, when one sits and meditates, one observes the rising and the falling. Time and again, when there's cause, there's bending and stretching. And other actions, such as making a fist. If you take the example of making a fist, if you were to do this action, to make a fist, without paying any attention to it, without putting your mind on the hand that is being clenched into a fist, you won't know the action. You won't know what happens at the time of making a fist. But if you focus carefully as you make a fist, even though you don't know true nature yet, the mind will stay there. The mind will be on the fist as you clench it, as you pay attention, so it won't run anywhere else. And one might feel, oh, the hand is tight. That means that the mind is aware of the hand, which is the form of the fist, and the stiffness or tightness that is the true nature. So one's aware of a combination of the concept of hand as well as the true nature of tightness. Or one might feel, oh, the fist is stiff or tight. So then one is aware of the position of the hand, that it's clenched into a fist, and one also is aware of the true nature, tightness. So one doesn't see true nature separately yet, but the mind is reaching the hand, which is the form, where the true nature is based, or it is reaching the manner, that is, it's knowing the position of the hand, that it's clenched into a fist. And at that time the mind is not running anywhere, so the mind is clean. No knowledge has arisen yet, but when effort, sati, and concentration are good, then one will just know the true nature. Oh, there's tightness, there's stiffness, there's tension. One will know these separately. So there are three levels on which we see. When we observe the body, we may see the form, that is hand, or the manner, the position that it's in, like the fist is clenched, or the true nature that happens in the moment of clenching the fist, like tightness. So there's form, manner, sabhava. Understand these three. When you observe what becomes obvious, what arises, you should say what you know. So in the case of observing the clenched fist, is it the hand that you come to know? Is it the clenching that you come to know? Or the qualities of tightness, tension, stiffness, which are true nature? So meditation practice is to look in order to see the true nature.
Polara tu polara, popo yen, go chibu te ji. Sajiyame, Saji Mienave. Go Messimoma, Misia to who me, Bola Lucy, Gide, Miene. Lave. Machivena of Maniamu. Tiro, Pomu teaching no say, one way to Sauni. Pondelane, say I said, Chinaga Vidu Matata Chia. Kilo dead or Lucy, Bamian, Badi is of Yonave. One by the dead one, one by me and never. Pona is said to Pona, me and never. Pinamaluji, Pina is said Pina, me and never. We had to do the Madidi Akona Lucy Agona. Down at the town of me never. Dinner the dinner, looked at me never. To Pioma. Look beautiful take Yogia. Is a good way how Mupyota Pore Ayongo say as I Chinaga Dido, Machilo Suratisha. Comamalupusa, Mayo de Usura Piara. Yona you did it to Miogi Piara. You Pora Sugar Tibia. A pint of my city river, Boragatu to Polara, Pora day and meet up with a sugar, Yogi town, Gia, Saiki, Ninabio, Nave. Imminent River, the Geloda Pocudi Puro, Yawadaman, Tidalo, Matidalo, Revole, Congo, Maloda Pocudi, Zaro, Bama Tujamumsi. The Niga later, the Bajo of the Bama too, the Bajo of the Bama to Dilova. Say I do the Bama to Mahogo. The Unite teaches at Lungheimer. Laruma never the same United teaches at Luma to the Sit Ali body, Elalishi Mayara. There are the two Yetcha Pukuri, Yogi, Bama 2 years. Pibima go United teachers at Loba. It's a Pikai, Shuma, the one, Muchatina is a Pikai go, see outside Chinaga Vido, Suzu, Yemia Body, Kona, Pasade Yokore, Tamilogo, Rumori, Pakleri, Yelio, the Tavido, Wayan, Eddie Ayada, Chitindida. Madamada to Chitimati, Tower. Edited Lujabuya Lily and the Domare.
In one's body, every action that arises, every true nature that arises, they don't arise because we create them. They arise due to causes. When something arises, one looks, and when one looks, then one sees something. So the arising of the object, the thing that becomes obvious to us, that happens on its own. We don't make it become obvious, it just arises. Looking, that's our job. We have to look at the thing when it becomes apparent to us. If one looks with focus, one will see. So if one wants to know about the rising and the falling, then one needs to put one's attention at the abdomen. One needs to be ready. And when the rising occurs, when the abdomen rises, one has to apply effort and aim. Applying effort and accurate aim is how the yogi looks. This is what the yogi does, to look. And if one looks, then one will see something. So the mind may come to know the form of the abdomen, the shape of it. Or the mind may come to know the manner of it, how it expands or collapses. But when effort mindfulness and concentration are good, then the mind will come into contact with the quality of stiffness, and it will know stiffness. The mind will come in contact with the quality of tension and know tension, or come in contact with the quality of movement, and one will know movement. So when one is not able to say what one sees, when one observes the rising and the falling, it's obvious that one isn't looking properly. So one has to observe so as to see. So one has to apply effort and aiming. The arising of the object, looking at it and coming to know something or seeing. The arising of the object is not something we can control. It just happens. Looking is very, very important for us. We have to look at what arises. When we look, we'll see. So for people who are practicing but cannot say clearly what it is that they see when they watch the rising or the falling or any object, when they can't say what it is they come to see, whether it's been 1 week or 2 weeks or more than 2 weeks. It's simply a matter that the yogi must do exactly as instructed. And when people come here to practice, they should have that attitude, that of just going to do exactly what I'm instructed. So if one is looking but not seeing yet, then one needs to correct oneself and do it according to the instructions, and to observe at the moment of arising, applying effort and accurate aiming. Similar to chewing a bit of food in one's mouth. So one has to pay attention when one is eating. If one doesn't pay attention when one is chewing food, then one won't know the taste of the food. So Sayadawgyi urges all of the yogis to work accordingly, to work according to the instructions. So that's all for today.